I was gonna say that. No, you should. I like it.
Good evening, 7:31. We'll all say the pledge. We'll start the meeting. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Hey, trustee Pritchett is back. Good.
Came back this for me.
So let's just do some announcements. Oh. Is that all right? Dana?
No, I just wanted to say that the placemaking committee has replanted, Congress gumball planter, downtown, and they look really good. And big trucks will leave them alone. The planters.
I just want to say that for those of you that are focused on this, the trucks are starting to roll in with our, as I refer to them, and Jay Hoffman always has referred to them as big Lego blocks, that when they're put together will be the new Aqueduct Pub. We've renamed it from a parking lot to the Aqueduct Pub, because it's near the Aqueduct. It's where a parking lot used to be, and now it's gonna be room for more cars, EV and e-bikes. And that'll be helpful to our businesses, it'll be helpful to nonprofits, it'll be helpful to the community center, and for residents who need parking. So we're all very excited for that. They did the test run. Our police already put it on their award to the social media posts. And we're excited about it.
Really, people in Ontario are following this very closely.
They're following. And then there'll be more, there's been RFP to do that, this and do, a nice Victorian mural for it, so it's fabulous, there'll be landscaping done to create usable green space, et cetera, et cetera. And there are many, many projects, but we have such a long agenda that I'm gonna stop. Anybody else have anything? All right, let's get going.
Okay, well, first on our agenda, we were cybersecurity consultant, Zoom in, but I don't think he's here yet, so I think, yeah.
I'm here.
The next
Thomas
Oh,
here.
you are here, okay, I didn't see you, Thomas. Okay, I know, Thomas can't be on camera, but I didn't even see you, on there at all, so. We have Thomas DeMeo from, PKF O'Connor Davies, who is our cybersecurity consultant, and has helped us enormously. And one thing he helped us with was getting a grant that would pay for cybersecurity penetration testing of our IT systems to evaluate, if we have any weaknesses, how we can correct those and better protect ourselves. So this was a $35,000 grant that Thomas helped us apply for and actually wrote the bulk of it because it was fairly technical. And we won the grant. So now we're looking to issue an RFP for a consultant to provide those services. They're not services that Thomas nor anybody internally can provide. So I'll turn it over to Thomas to just give an overview. But we're really doing this to inform the board because next week we will have a resolution on the agenda to allow us to go out with an RFP for this service. Thomas, any details I might have missed?
Yes. No, I think you did a great job of explaining it. With the penetration testing, effectively someone is acting as a hacker, right? I think that's the key difference between doing a typical assessment. And this is where using the same tactics, techniques, they're going to try to break in, whether it's the PD, the village, the water department, and see if there's anything there that could be exploited that could potentially gain access. So it is a great exercise to perform, and like Karen said, it is covered by the grant.
Okay.
If the board has any questions?
I don't. Does somebody have questions? It's a grant, we're not matching it, correct?
No,
And then
there's
do you
no
have
match.
to spur this, or is it just that we got the grant?
Well, we got the grant, it's part of, our overall, process of just making sure we're maximizing our cybersecurity. We will be talking about policies and things, going forward, but this is really to make sure that we are as secure as we can possibly be.
Without violating methods and whatever the term methods and I think when you're talking about like the military, it's like methods and something else.
Top secret stuff.
Yeah, maybe that. Can you talk a little bit about how you will go about doing this?
How the firm selected will go about doing this?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so I mean, effectively, they're going to use similar tactics. So we would provide them the external IP addresses. So they would try to break in through the firewalls, right? Just seeing what's available and executing, in a manner similar to how an attacker would try the same tactics. Of course, with the guardrails of do no harm. So everything that will be laid out will be instructed that should, for whatever reason, what they might try cause disruption to stop, let us know first before proceeding further. On the internal penetration test, typically they provide a device that gets plugged in. And then from there, they pretty much have a assumed breach component where they try to pivot and move throughout the network based on internal protocols and things of that nature. But again, with the core philosophy of do no harm. If they see something that could potentially cause a disruption, stop, let us know first, and then let the village decide if they wanted to proceed after hours, or simply just fix it and then move on with your testing.
So is any of it offline through because there's an aspect of the weakness of our IT system that has to do with users. Is any of that involved in this?
So a part of that would be social engineering, right? To see if users could be phished, to potentially leverage that to gain access to the environment.
But it would just be phishing. There wouldn't be anything else.
No, so it's going to be phishing, which is part of the penetration test on the external. So it's pretty much your primary methods, right? Internal, external, social engineering from a penetration testing standpoint.
Thank you.
All right, Thomas, thank you so much for zooming in. We appreciate that, and we will look forward to getting the RFP out promptly. So have a lovely night wherever you may be, Thomas. And next up, we have Joyce Schrockpole, our village historian, who is here to talk about the New York State African American Heritage Grant, which is a grant that she brought to our attention. She is looking to apply for the grant, and if the board agrees, we will have a resolution on to allow for the application at next week's meeting. Joyce?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for hearing me on this. And Karen almost explained it all, so I don't need to say much. But this great opportunity from Governor Hochul is the New York State African American Heritage Grant for educational programming and research. I'm sorry, that's going off. It's a grant that you can ask for up to $150,000. And a lot of the work I've already done. But there are some things that I would love to do in a greater degree. Before I left the HPC, I wanted to do a Black Historic District, and they have been wonderful, and they have been working on putting it on the website, site by site. But this will be a great opportunity to actually get some brochures developed, maybe a story walking board, AutoCast, maybe a digital walking tour where you don't have to put signage if people are developing down there, so we don't lose the history. So I think that would be great. I get approached a lot by the school district during Black History Month about local Black history. So I wanted to partner with Joyce Markovitz, and she is a book writer, children's book writer, and write a series of books, Black history that I have researched and can do more research to make a series that the school district can use in the lower grades. Um, and also, the research that I'm done can be going to a traveling museum because a lot of times the schools can't leave. They don't have the busing. So I can make portable displays 10 by 10. I've done them before where they can go to schools. They can have programming with them. They've also asked me about Juneteenth and they've asked me about early Black history because there is a time span for this grant. It's early colonial up into 1974. So I could talk about the Great Migration, how Ossining has changed with the presence of Black people, and do it in a really robust way that leaves a lasting documentation of Black presence in Ossining. And it's a grant that is not a matching grant. It is a reimbursable grant, however. The money will have to be spent and the village would be reimbursed. But it's encouraging that it's not a matching and it is strictly for preserving African American history locally.
Questions or comments?
How much, were you gonna, is there an amount you can ask for, or?
Yeah, yes. So you can ask for up to $150,000 for the educational because I'm not doing capital. So wanted to ask for between 80 and 90,000, which would allow me to do the books, have the writer, the editor, the AutoCast. I already reached out to a few people to get quotes, and that's how I was able to come up with the number. So to do all of the Oh, I also want to do a military study as well. And hopefully, a lot of the people that we help find that did serve and represented Ossining, that the end result would be they will be able to get a banner and it'll be covered under this program.
I'll go. Joyce, thank you. Appreciate it. This is great. So I have two questions. One, why does it stop at 1974?
That was the parameters that they chose. In the informational, they did not say why they stopped at 1974.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. And secondly, one of the things that I am struck as I kind of walk through the village, there are reminiscences of different efforts to capture our either culture or history in different ways. And I'm curious to what extent might this be in conversation with those other things. So, for example, there are kind of the plaques in front of the library or in front of other certain historic places that explain what they are and things like that. Would they be similar in style, or would they kind of look and feel completely different?
I would say they would complement the first part of your question. I think it would not compete, but complement. So I was thinking immediately when you said that about uh, Riverworks, that has a sign outside as part of the museum in the streets. But if we have AutoCast, maybe now they could stop and they'll hear a whole story about Dr. Hill. And still the existing sign will be there, but there'll be something supplemental that would tell them, click here. I haven't thought it out yet. That's part of it, is to get a team to help me think out the plans of how we're going to execute the things that I want to do. But I think it would be to complement it. So it would have, I don't want to disrupt because I want our beautiful village to remain beautiful and I don't want it to look unorganized. But if there's something existing, I want whatever we're going to put there to complement it and not to distract from it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob, questions?
I have none.
None?
I had one.
Yep, please.
No, I think it sounds like a wonderful opportunity. One question I have in a situation like this where books are being written, who owns the IP to those?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of what you said.
Who owns the intellectual capital on the books?
So that's a good question. I will talk with Joyce. I believe the owner would end up being the village, because the village is, so I don't want to answer that. Let me get the answer and I will get back to you if that is okay.
That's right. That's kind of the answer that I would look for in this kind of a situation, so.
We can certainly get that confirmed.
Yeah.
So I have
It's a
some,
great book, so.
I have some questions, so if, so you're still in the creative thinking part, it sounds like, right, it's a grant. So number one, Karen, explain to me again, I know the word reimbursable, I get it, we have to put the money. Who is the they in this, who is the grant giver in this, and what department of the state or government are they from?
I believe,
Okay, so this is, oh, go ahead, Joyce,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
go ahead, Karen, go ahead.
No, you can answer the question on, I believe it's the governor's, through the governor's office, correct?
Governor's office
Parks.
and parks. Mhm,
Parks, okay, so it would be New York State Parks.
mhm.
And the grant goes to the Village of Ossining. So, as we do with many of our grants, and Thomas DeMeo as an example, someone, may, with the expertise on a particular content, may help us write the grant, but we would submit it based on a framework that's agreed upon by the village and the person, in this case, it would be Joyce, on her program, but the village would be the recipient and technically the applicant as well.
Alright, who's the applicant?
The village.
So we're the entity,
Yeah.
okay. I asked this because it seems to me this should have gone through the school system, like books, education. The school's interested, they have 6 times the money we do in case something happens, and they're also part of the state system because they report into state ed as a body, a governing body. So interesting that it's going through the village. Are there other villages slash towns that are doing this? And is this a competitive grant that we're competing with other villages and towns? I assume it's New York State, if the state is the body, government body that's doing this.
Yeah, so you're not just competing with other, so yes, the answer is yes, other villages and towns and cities are looking to get this grant, but also other 501c3s that are preserving Black history.
Are you partnering with any 501c or you haven't thought that far ahead? Or you don't want to, you rather stay in our village and you're the village historian?
So I've been asked on different people's applications to be a subject matter expert. So that is my partnership with them outside of being historian. But I wanted to do this for our village. I wanted
Okay,
us,
so you're a subject matter expert, do you know how many villages? I'm just curious, does this exist somewhere else now, or is this a grant to actually create this environment in multiple places?
so this grant is if I'm understanding what you're asking correctly, this grant is brand new. It just released, and there are a lot of people now that are doing this work that are looking to take advantage of this money.
Is there an opportunity so a lot of this is digital, correct? Even the auto, I forgot what you called it, is a digital
AutoCAD?
platform.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
digital.
that's a digital platform,
Yes, it is.
so is that multilingual?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I didn't hear that part, I apologize.
I didn't say.
Okay. Oh, okay then, the reason I didn't hear it. So it sounds exciting, what do you need from the village specifically, aside from the money, because we have to,
You need a resolution, just 2 things. There's a total of $2.8 million for the education side of it. It will be divided up into 2 periods of award. The important part here is that there's a pre-application. The pre-application is actually due a week from Friday. After the pre-application, it's reviewed by the state. If they think you're okay, they will then release to you the application. Application is due by August. And the awards probably will come out in November. And financing, and if I remember correctly, Joyce, looking at it, the projects have to be done by August of 2030. That's basically the deadline there, in terms of that. But what this board would need to do is just essentially authorize, as we do with other grants, authorize to go forward with the grant, submit, in this case, the pre-application, and then the subsequent full application when it is released by the state.
okay. I asked these questions because last year we learned that much of the money from both the state, that then goes to county, that then trickles down to us. When the federal government stopped things, as you know, Joyce, lots of grants were cut back, and I, as a board member, do not want this board or future boards beholden to have to fund something that should come from the state because it decided to change its mind or stop the funding, so I just want to be clear that get the money, we pay, we get money back, that
Yeah.
there is some sort of fail-safe system. If it was 10,000, that's okay, but it's on 90,000, it sounds like, that's actual
Once,
real money.
once the contracts are awarded, and even really before then, once the grants are committed, and we went through this when we, recently looked at, different federal and state grants, within recent years, that we were hearing about the cuts and things being pulled back, from the state position, and before they would, again, I can't speak for everything that could happen in the future, but if they were to not fund the grants, then we wouldn't get the contract and the money would go away. But there's no circumstance where, once we've committed to the grant and we're now asking for reimbursements, I think it would be very unlikely. What my understanding is, there would probably be several other cutbacks happening at the state level before.
Okay,
Those
this is
things.
part of the parks.
Yeah.
All right. And here, Joyce, I was telling someone that she's so busy, she can't take on one more project, but I must have been wrong. Apparently infinite amount of energy coming from you. We're very excited to have you, do this project, and I love the digital aspect of the education. So it looks like a thumbs up, the way it's being presented. And I assume somebody is going to be working with Joyce to manage all the details and the weeds, because all these state grants require hours of, grant time. You excited?
I
Joyce?
am. Thank you.
Great, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Great. So we'll put this on, I guess, for next week, it looks like.
Okay, next on the agenda.
Bye, George. No, don't say bye, George, you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting.
I love you, but not that much. Good night.
Thank you so much, Joyce. Next on the agenda, we have Jim Wendling from Wild Revolver Partners, who is also zooming in tonight. As you know, we have a unique situation in the proposed project, for 34th State Street. We have home ownership, a new program called the AHOP program, and we also have all on one side. Our affordable housing policy was written almost a quarter of a century ago. It is one of the first, I think Valerie wrote it, she was here when she, It was her eighth grade project. Yeah, and she was an intern back then, and seriously, she, I think it's important to know that Ossining was the first municipality in Westchester to have affordable housing, which involves setting aside units and new developments at more affordable rates. So always being progressive, we're also now one of the first communities, and certainly I think the first village doing the AHOP program. And as these programs evolve at the state level, some of the ramifications for the programs don't fit nicely and squarely into our affordable housing policy. However, the objectives that those programs are trying to achieve are very much in keeping with things we want to do. In this case, it would be internship opportunities, particularly for what's called that missing middle sector, where people maybe don't qualify for affordable housing, but they could qualify for affordable home ownership in this program. We've been talking to Wild Revolver about making some different accommodations to allow our food to be flexible enough to meet the needs of this, as well as future programs that may come up that upon board approval, we would then have a policy that would be a little bit more flexible. Again, this doesn't make any commitments to projects other than this is specific to this project, but the changes in the code are somewhat intended to just give us latitude when other projects that may come forward that may also be a little bit different because we're meeting the needs of a housing crisis, that the board has the latitude to accommodate to government standards and requirements that might be slightly different. Again, all those projects would have to be approved by the board before that we'd even consider that next stage. So with that, I'd like to turn it to Jim.
Hi,
Hi,
good evening,
Jim.
everybody. Good evening. How are you?
Evening.
Well, Karen, I think that was a really good description and overview, so thank you. I've looked at the language over the past couple days, and I looked at it a few months ago, just to make certain, as Karen described, it is consistent with the Affordable Homeownership Opportunity Program, and there's nothing in there that would be conflicting and would cause any issues with any of our marketing efforts or offering plan, which will be reviewed by the Attorney General and approved. Um, just since I first talked to you guys about this months ago, we've now gone through the process of getting an offering plan or getting two offering plans approved at the New York State level for two projects, two AHOP projects in White Plains. We have a third one under review. So we've learned kind of lessons learned and it's evolved. We've understood now. We've gone through a marketing process for both the two White Plains projects. We had nearly 3,000 names in each of the two projects. So it shows the need for these affordable condominiums that are priced, just as a reminder, priced at 80% AMI and available to household income up to 100% area median income. So I'm good with the language as I've seen it, or the modifications. I think Stuart and I discussed a minor discrepancy that I found earlier. Other than that, everything works for our purposes in terms of the affordable homeownership program. And on that, we've been before the planning board, zoning board, and historical preservation committee over the past couple of weeks. Everything is going very well, so we're really excited about how the approval process is going. And we're pushing the boulder up the hill and continue to be excited about this. We're out there now, if you see us, doing environmental testing. We already did the testing to demonstrate that the program is a brownfield cleanup program or eligible for the brownfield cleanup program. It was then accepted into the brownfield cleanup program. And now we're doing additional investigative work, which is required to inform what the remedial action work will be, what the cleanup work will be. So that's if you see trucks and machines out there, that's what they're doing now. So I'll pause and answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, so what is the board being asked for? So if everything fits and the language is all good, what are we being asked for?
The language would have to be ratified by the board. So Valerie, maybe like we can talk a little bit specifically just to overview what's changed in a little bit more detail, where I don't know, Stuart.
Sure. Valerie, could you just do me a favor?
Yes.
Problem?
Yeah.
What are we looking for?
Yeah.
What are we solving for? How are we solving it?
Okay. So the problem is, we'll use 34 State Street. The developers came to us because our affordable housing regulations, specifically, as Jim mentioned, one, did not meet the specific criteria for like AHOP. So therefore, they'd be providing affordable housing, but it would be contradictory to some of our parameters within the rules and regulations. And the other problem was because this is a development site, which will have for sale units that are affordable and rental units that are market rate, that the way the current regulations was set up, that all the affordable or the mix of the unit had to be in one building, as opposed to the fact that there would be two separate buildings. One would have the market rate, the other one, because they're rentals, and the others would be the home ownership. So we brought this back to the board a number of months ago, identifying the issues at hand, and the board did direct us to work out and develop an accommodation for these types of developments moving forward, because you might see more of them, especially on some of your larger properties. And then also to be able to accommodate or provide some flexibility for state-run programs that have their own criteria for affordable housing. This does not change your inclusionary housing for your rentals, your typical, that will continue. And it just allows for some flexibility if there is state funding in it.
So I heard just a nuance,
Yes,
so clarification, please.
sure.
Village manager said it's very specific only to this development, but you said it affects.
It won't affect anything moving forward. Right now, the changes will be affecting this particular development. Everything else that you already have established in your affordable housing program, it will not affect. But another development that comes forward in the future could potentially also, be accommodated through these rules and regulation changes. But everything would have to come before this board to get permission.
So it's not as of right.
That's
They
correct.
will
No,
not be.
it would still have to come, it just widens it provides more flexibility without being too overly prescriptive, so that we're literally tailoring our code to meet a developer's, a particular developer or a particular development's need. It just broadens it, given the range of things that may or may not come down the pipe that we may or may not want to consider. So it provides a little wider flexibility than we have currently. But that said, there is no project that would even get to the stage where that would be a consideration until the board approved the project. So you have to want the project for any of this to be, the project would have to be approved.
Right, in the local law that Stuart wrote, or pulled together for this meeting, you can see that under the affordable housing unit definition, it does say where a project is presented to the Board of Trustees, right? So it's acknowledging that you give deference to allowing for higher median income percentages. It also specifically identifies where we were talking about having, like, for example, with the proposal for 34 State Street, the rental apartment, market rate rentals, and then the affordable homeownership, there is criteria in there that says that, again, this is subject to the Board of Trustees approval.
Okay, Bob, let's start with you. Any questions, comments on this?
Good. Seems pretty good. Yeah, I went back to the notes from the last time, the result seems to make sense based off of that. I mean, the one question I've got is, language in the regulations piece. And the language for the purchase unit, the for sale affordable housing, initial sales price piece. So 3A, bold part there. It says that units shall be marketed to households. Where does that tie to the people who buy it? Right, it says it'll be marketed to households, right? So to me, that says we'll market it to them, but somebody else can buy it, that it's over that limit, so.
It speaks to, and Jim, correctly me if I'm wrong, but this speaks to the affirmative marketing plan that's required by homes and community renewals for affordable projects.
Okay,
So. it doesn't
Required,
mean
yeah,
you still
required.
have to qualify. You still have to qualify,
okay,
but the reason for that is marketing to ensure that a wide berth of diverse potential occupants or buyers can purchase, but it does not mean that, so for example, it prevents like some exclusionary workarounds where you build it, but you only mail the people you want to live there, right? I mean, it's, you wanna make sure that people know about it, so it really speaks to the awareness of the project amongst potentially qualified purchasers.
Yeah,
So-
and I'll just add to that, with Westchester County and New York State Homes Community Renewal funding, in this capital stack, you have to do, as the village manager Karen said, a wide range of marketing that, complies with the Affordable Fair Housing Marketing plans, both plans. And you don't do any vetting until the lottery is over. So anybody can apply. They might be overqualified, they might be underqualified, they may not be able to afford it, they may have bad credit. But all of the vetting happens, and we use a third party to do the vetting, Housing Action Council. All of the vetting of each applicant is done after the lottery. And then at that point, we counsel, qualify, and move forward with applicants on an individual basis.
based off of the maximum sales price and the income and the sales price and the payment can't be more than 33% of the 35% of their income.
Correct. 33%, you look at 33% of gross income, and the factors are your mortgage, your homeowner's insurance, the taxes, and the common charges, or co-op
Okay.
fees if it's a co-op. What we're doing is a condo.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's the math that's done. Correct.
Got it, all right, I just wanna make sure that it went past the marketing
Actually.
to that, because what really matters is we get,
Exactly.
so, right?
Yes,
And so I
yep,
just want to confirm that, like, verbally.
yes.
Okay. Now you say co-op or conduct, whatever. Okay, I thought you said co-op.
He said it's not a co-op.
Okay, so, no, Dana, questions, comments?
No, good.
All right, no more questions, comments?
No, it's great.
Yeah, all great. Still wanna hear it every time we see you, Jim, that what percentage is going to Ossining people?
I'm sorry, Mayor, could you repeat that?
The whole point of this was the idea here was that a certain percentage is being marketed, is being set aside for Ossining people.
That decision happens at the state level. The county has already said that any local preference would be specific to Ossining, but the state has to approve the local preference based on demographic, information that we've submitted to Wilder Bolter, which I believe now is at HCR, correct?
Yeah, and just to confirm, we already have preference units set aside at both White Plains projects and the New Rochelle project. And what they do, what HCR does is the Office of Fair Housing reviews the data, which we have from you, and responds in writing that preference units are allowed. So as soon as we have a resolution on that, I'm certain, I don't think they'll focus on it until we get a little further along with the approvals, but we could put that at the top of their inbox and make them focus on it. But there's already precedent for each of our AHOP developments in Westchester County having local preferences.
Okay, great. All righty, moving right along. Sounds fantastic.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Jim.
Jim.
Again, we're
Thank you.
welcome to stay.
Good seeing everybody. Thank you very much.
Take care. So a couple of weeks ago, Valerie, Danielle from Valerie's office and I were at Here Coffee and Leader, and some of you showed up as well. And we had a, community feedback session where we spoke to, I think we had probably about 50 people show up over the course of 3 hours. And, provide feedback on our proposed zoning.
This is so loud. No, it's not.
It's not.
What is the whole paper? I
No, I know you guys are like really going hard on the paper tonight, but, we had a good,
So
so
I apologize,
I
apologize to that thing over there.
we got a lot of,
Al owes me.
we got a lot of good feedback, much of it, not all of it, but much of it reinforced, the ideas that we had. Certainly the members of the immediate community, who showed up were happy about that. There were a range of other people too, not from the immediate community, so we did reach more people throughout Ossining. And generally speaking, things went well. Valerie's presentation, to take you through that feedback.
And if anyone wants any of the handouts, freshly stapled copies of each
You have to
all.
stay for.
I would like to, but
I just, I think this is more paper than we've received since we've done budgets. It's,
there's 3 different documents being passed around, so 1 pile, 2 piles. Hopefully we'll move on, and hopefully we'll be done with the end.
I think the problem was came off the screen that you were doing, so.
Yeah, mine.
No, really appreciate the effort.
So the, Jamie, if you can move. So I'm just gonna kind of walk through the presentation. That's not what you have in your hand, but I think a lot of it is just, it's not the details we'll be talking about. So just in general, we had on April 22nd, we went to Here and Beer Coffee. We were there for about 3 hours. We focused on communicating with the community as to specifically the Station Plaza North zoning district changes. We had approximately 40 people attend, and 15 written public comments were provided and collected throughout the event. So if you can go to the next slide. All right, so we specifically focused on explaining to the public that the proposed amendments were developed to preserve the Station Plaza North historic mixed-use density identity to allow for different types of housing in smaller lots. We also specifically highlighted that residential uses would continue to be permitted in the Station Plaza North, but we're revising the bulk regulations to allow for a range of flexible, small-scale housing types. And that the amendments would support either single-family, two-family, three-family, four-family, townhomes, and mixed-use buildings up to 6 apartments. We also emphasize that commercial use such as office and retail and restaurants will remain as already proposed, and that no changes are being made to the parking requirements, and that the updates will focus on building form rather than like layout, and that the layout themselves should be able to accommodate some parking on site. So the feedback, if you can go to the next slide. So the feedback we received was the following. First, we received that there was support for the regulatory flexibility in the zoning from the public. They liked how the zoning would be able to enable redevelopment. They also supported the idea that the zoning would allow them to potentially rebuild on non-conforming lots. And let me just explain that. So right now, the single family, two family, and three families that already exist there are non-permitted uses currently in the Station Plaza North zoning. So if for some reason somebody needed to rebuild, technically that would be a non-conforming use. On what we are proposing, if for some reason somebody has a smaller lot than we are proposing, for example, for a two-family, they would potentially be able to go to the zoning board of appeals and say it is a permitted use, but it's just a non-conforming lot, right? That gives them more flexibility and more ability to be able to rebuild what they have if for some reason there was a situation that would take place. So that was something that was a big concern to the public because they recognized that a lot of their homes right now are non-conforming uses, and that was something that they had concerns about. Next slide. The next was with the housing supply and growth. There was support for increased housing supply. We had a few people that wanted to even have higher density housing, but that was just very few. Most of the people there wanted to kind of be able to continue the types of housing that exist. There was also support for more housing diversity and more housing options, so they liked that in the proposed zoning. And that they also wanted the amendments to allow the neighborhood residents to maintain their current properties or living arrangements. And that's something that we're already starting to deal with the non-conforming, the proposed amendments that we put forth last month with the non-conforming residential uses. So this would also allow for, again, some more flexibility now that the uses that are there would become more or less permitted uses within the zoning district as opposed to non-conforming uses. Then the next category was, next slide, Jeannie. Whoops. Nope. Back one. Nope. There you go. The next was parking and traffic. All right, so as you can imagine, there was concern about that the adequate parking should be able to be provided on site as much as possible with what we're proposing in terms of like the bulk requirements. There was also a suggestion to allow for some additional height or density when parking is actually provided. There was also concerns about issues with along Secor and Main Street, especially with townhome style units, that might be too many curb cuts and the concern for traffic. And then there was also definitely support for the parking lot on Main Street that should become like a municipal lot as opposed to just for the train station parking. Then the last bucket that we talked about where we received comment on, one more, Jamie. is the design scale and community character. So this was also something that was really important. First of all, a lot of people noted that architectural quality and aesthetics are important, that whatever gets developed there should match the charm. You know, clearly people would like to see some of those abandoned homes actually be, you know, redeveloped. That they were concerned with maintaining the appropriate scale and that the new building should not overwhelm the existing neighborhoods. And so we walked them through the heights that we are proposing for the different uses. There was also concerns about protecting river views and visual connections. And we explained to them that, like, you know, we have the village still owns I'm gonna say that, I'm not calling it's the vacant, I guess park viewpoint, I don't know, it's not parkland, but it's village owned property. Yeah. Village owned property, and that's not being anticipated being, you know, sold, that's just gonna be, as is. And that they were also very much in favor of limiting large apartment buildings, and so we also explained to them that would be the case, but they did support the mixed use, small scale type of development. So anyhow, so that was pretty much the summary. So what we did, we took that, that's just the details of the comments, Jamie, so we don't need that. So what we did, we took that and we have proposed some modifications to the actual zoning itself, and that's in your packets. What we are proposing to do is remove the townhomes as an option at this point, because that seemed to be one of concern from the community because of the parking situation. We are still proposing single family, 2-family, 3-family, 4-family, and mixed use buildings. The one other.
The townhomes, I'm sorry, why did you take it? Why did you eliminate that?
There were some concerns from the community that having townhomes would be more problematic in terms of parking and especially with the curb cuts coming in and out of the property because of the traffic along C4.
The townhomes are too densely populated?
It's not so much too densely populated, but having, if you have the way you would potentially line up the townhomes, you would have all individual driveways or curb cuts. And those would be very close as opposed to having just one curb cut. And maybe you have you might have the same number of cars coming out, but for like your 4-family.
And it's really the structure, like a townhome could be a 3-family, but it's called a townhome the way it's structured as opposed to a 3-family home.
Right, so it
Which would have
wasn't
a
the
central
density,
garage.
right, it was really more of the curb cuts and the traffic. The other thing we're proposing is with the 3-family dwellings, we went back and looked at, you know, what is the possibility of putting a 3-family home and how would that work with trying to accommodate the parking. And so we are suggesting that the maximum building height would be 3 stories or 42 feet or 4 stories or 48 feet if all required parking is provided on site. This is something that was very important to the community, is being able to provide as much parking on site for any new development.
So essentially that just means like the ground floor can be parking and then you build.
Exactly.
That's.
Yes.
But the ground floor is a floor.
Well, it would be the part, right, and therefore you would have the 3 levels above one unit.
That's 4 levels.
Yes,
You'd be allowed to go up higher if you had parking on the.
that's correct.
So the parking is 1 floor and then 3 floors above that?
Yes.
That's the size of the downtown.
That's the max, 4 stories.
Yes, that would be the max. That is also 4 stories is proposed on a couple other iterations, like a 4-family as well as a mixed use building. But clearly 2-family and a single family would be 2.5, 2.5 stories for single family and 3 stories for 2-family, because that would also be able to accommodate some parking on the lower level.
And that's dictated by lot size too.
That's correct. It's
So
all dictated by lot.
Your
size as well.
lot may not permit you to build 4 stories.
Right, you would need a larger lot in that zoning.
Kind of somewhat tangential, but is SPM. Can you apply for a pilot in an SPM?
You can,
As of now.
As of now.
right,
Kind of goes counter to that,
I'm sorry?
which kind of goes counter to the premise of get all the parking on board.
well, if, so if for some reason somebody, like. The idea is that we would be able to accommodate in terms of bulk. To allow for the parking on site.
Yeah.
Right, so, because what we didn't want a situation is where we are not providing that, and then automatically everyone's gonna have to come and say, we just can't fit it on site because the bulk requirements permit, you know.
Okay.
So this way, if, I mean, there could be the circumstances where somebody try it, and but they would have to pay money. And so ideally, we're trying to be as flexible.
And we
Yeah.
could
Right,
deny
that's what.
with, you know, according to the rules, obviously.
Yes.
That's the law rule.
So this is for rebuilding.
Yeah.
So when we did that parking, it wasn't so people can rebuild and add, it was because they simply don't have room now,
That's correct.
because the money is irrelevant. That's not the purpose of why
That's
we ask for money. Because if you're gonna rent stuff out, you'll make that money in a month that we're charging, or in 10 months or whatever.
Right.
That's not why we charge fees. The idea was that if you're not able to do it, we're giving you a way out as a last resort.
That's correct.
This sounds like you're embedding it to almost incentivize people to do it. So tell me why that's not an incentive.
No, what we did was specifically have tried to make the bulk requirements, the minimum lot areas, so that they could accommodate parking. So if for some reason somebody were to come for a payment in lieu of parking, it would probably most likely be an existing building, right, that's already there. Or some extreme circumstances that they're not able to provide parking on site. But again, that would be up to this board to see the, you know, basically the hardship.
I actually heard it differently in that the way that they drew up the proposed requirements, it actually is more amenable to them to have the appropriate number of parking spots on site as opposed to automatically needing them off site.
Right.
This is the way they drew them up, so that which is the point of the bonus level.
Mhm.
If you can get all your parking spots on the first floor, then you get extra height. If you can't get all your parking spots on the first floor and you need to do a pilot, then you don't get the extra height.
Okay.
That's the way I heard.
Yes, and especially, that was especially for the three-family dwelling.
My mind's going, actually the
Over
opposite.
3 levels, it would be 3 levels. If they went with parking, it'd be 4 levels.
To me, a level's a level, it doesn't matter if it's being used for parking, we see how houses are being used and everything. So from the theory to reality, I would say that more than half the garages and buildings in this community, when you see through the doors or when they're open, is not being used for cars. It's in fact used for housing, it's being used for illegal rentals, it's being used for storage.
Okay.
And you could see that when people plow in the winter, that half of our garages have snow in front of them, because frankly, nobody's pulling a car out of there. And we don't manage garages, right, in our process, so I've sat here long enough that we have spent so much energy on doing things, and while we always say the board has to decide, the reality is that once you set a precedent, everybody walks in here and said, but you did it for that guy. I mean, we have one case after another about if you do it for one, you're setting a precedent. If you do it for 2, you're setting a precedent. If you do it for 3, and then we can't undo. So when we're doing new stuff, I want to look at all of the good characters and the bad characters that use the views, because they seem to be smarter than us. And what they end up doing with their problems. So I just wanna like sort of think, sort of like my security conversation, not mine, but security. Basically, what we're being told, there's gonna be we're gonna pay people to try to hack the system. That's what that grant is for. Because the only way you could actually figure out how to do cybersecurity is to hire hackers who think in that term. So I'm trying to make sure you guys are thinking in those terms and dealing in the world of reality and not the world of like Well, it's a garage, yeah, it's not a garage, because half the garages aren't being used that way, and it's not only in our community, all over the place, I need you guys to make sure you're covering the bases. That's why I'm giving a little pushback and just trying to think differently.
I'm just, can you elaborate or like just be concise in the, like, what would you propose different? To you,
Who are you talking
to
to?
you, yeah,
I don't know. I'm trying to make sure that I understand where there's cracks. And I'm thinking of the cybersecurity hackers, like where's the crack here that somebody will go through? It isn't my brain wave to, sort of think of a solution, to be honest. I'm trying to say, where's the cracks here that we just shouldn't be creating? Things will crack and we'll go, oh, we didn't think of it, I get that, that happens, normal. I'm trying to get you guys to think about, okay, how does somebody beat this? But you guys see people go to the planning, the zoning, see this stuff, all, like when you meet with the chairs, they'll tell stories here of all, and they already know the people. I will say that I do wanna ask, and I just haven't gotten around to it, because I've been so busy. And I'm gonna ask our council to start thinking about garages, because I think that space and using that as a floor and all of that. We gotta start, I mean, I think we should have garages, more of them, yay, I just want us to think about cracks in the zoning that we're doing, because when you're doing 4 apartments, that's no longer you and another apartment, it's a business now, right? Now 4 units is a business,
Right.
people are renting. It's not like an individual home and we're figuring out zoning for an individual.
One of the things that makes it a little easier when you're talking about new development as opposed to somebody's had a house for 50 years, maybe they changed their garage, we would never know. If these are now on the books as, you know, new things, and some of this we'll be discussing when we bring the parking discussion to the next work session. So once you've made that commitment to have the garage, you would automatically be rejected from, getting them. You know, if you decided, oh, I need parking permits, you would be rejected because we know you have a garage.
Because you were supposed to design it
And
based
that,
on.
and that.
I'm not saying what you're putting together is bad. But you and I just read it a little differently.
You're talking new or existing?
New, so if you had new, it's hard to do it on existing.
Oh, 100%.
But I think that we are looking at ways where we can better vet if somebody's, you know, using their garage, like we have some. We have some suggestions, I think, advance what we were doing, you know, with perfection maybe being the enemy of the good here. But for any of these buildings, you're talking about a new change that's now recently gone in, we can start incorporating more communication that goes to, because the parking permits are gonna be, our proposals are going to limit,
Right.
you know, the excess that we've had on the overnight permits. So if you now have committed to a 3-family home with parking on site, and then a year from now, you decide you wanna, you know, you've illegally done something, let's say, you haven't done, because it goes back to Joe or the planning board, we're gonna say, you can't do that, you don't meet the parking requirements, or if you do this, you'd have to be considered for a pileup, which you might not get now because you originally said you were gonna do the parking. At that point, it would be much easier for us to be able to say, oh, that property, we know you have a garage, you just don't, you know what I mean, like, we're gonna have that information pretty, you know, more readily available. It's hard to go back 50 years on that stuff, but for the newer developments, it's not so hard.
So new is defined as rebuilding, right?
Yeah.
So it's taking something and rebuilding it, that's new. Okay.
We would like to, if the board is comfortable, we'd like to potentially put this on, for recommendation to the planning board to get them to start looking at this. At this point in time.
Did you find that the people that showed up Saturday, I mean, you don't ask them where they're from?
We did, we did, we had a lot, there were a lot of people from the neighborhood. And we actually talked to people that were, like, it was nice because people were able to say, this is my property,
Yeah.
let's talk about this, right, you know, so.
Great.
That was, I think that was very
We
helpful.
had
I mean,
people
it's-
though
it's
from
good.
other neighborhoods
Yes.
too, which was also nice.
Yeah,
No, that's great, that's good, I'm just curious as to who shows up and all of that. These are, I mean, we have 30,000 people, but 50 is a good number. for Saturday, you know, to
Was
show up.
Wednesday night.
I'm sorry, Wednesday, that's right, because it was right before.
But there was a lot of people from the
That's great.
neighborhood that were there.
Fabulous.
Sounds
Sounds promising, people. Like we were taking all the comments and gelling them together.
So I like that you're dropping your townhome, especially like on Seaport Road. I don't know, you know, I mean, that, I mean, it's a problematic stretch, but I think they're just too big, yeah. So I think they're, yeah.
Is there any indication these changes would accelerate potential fix up of those houses on Sequoia?
So.
It's different
Right,
conversation.
that's probably a different conversation,
Okay,
however, there were a few people that did come, there were a number of people that did come, and we talked to a couple property owners that are looking to do something to their property or invest into their property, but they've been holding off because they heard that, like, they are currently non-conforming, and so, you know, and so that will hopefully help with people wanting to like maintain or, you know, improve their properties, some of the existing properties for sure.
Okay,
Okay, the next topic is a payment in lieu of parking request, and we're revisiting this for 171 Broken Avenue, and this is something that had come to the board's attention previously, and I'm gonna turn it over to Stuart and Valerie to go through.
If you want me to start. So this particular property, this particular property's been in front of the planning board for a number of months. They finally completed their environmental review, and the planning board, as part of the payment in lieu of parking process, needs to provide some sort of recommendation or over to this board. As part of the planning board process, you would look at the payment in lieu of parking, determine if this is something that you'd want to move forward with. If the answer is yes, then it would go back to the planning board for them to finish the site plan approval. If the answer is no, the applicant would still return back to the planning board for site plan approval, but they would have to modify their particular project. With, if you recall, the 217 Main Street, that one received a positive recommendation from the planning board. In this particular situation, the planning board opted not to give a recommendation. They had concerns with the particular, that particular intersection, and the fact that the applicant is proposing needs 2 payment in lieu parking spaces. And those spaces would clearly go onto that street, and they have concerns with the overall problem of the street with the current operations. And the fact that there's a crosswalk, bus stop, and there. And so they asked specifically to refer this application over to the board with a note that they have not specifically given a recommendation.
so it's not a negative. or
Right,
positive.
they wanted to
They're
have,
concerned.
right, they wanted to give, you know, you the opportunity, the board the opportunity to weigh in and make the final decision, but they did not, they specifically would not give,
They put in all that.
Yes,
So the proposed plan, the plan that was in front of the planning board
right,
was for, I think, if I read it right, it requires 6.
yes, that's what I have.
And they have
Yeah.
room for 4
Mhm.
if they do the additions the way that they want to. Right, so the proposed sites plan, the site specific plan is for 4 plus 2 offset,
Yeah,
right? Okay,
yes, and they want 2 one-bedroom apartments along with office here in the middle.
got it. And it's currently being used for light industrial,
It's
think it's
vacant,
it's vacant, okay.
it's vacant,
Yeah.
3 years.
yeah.
well, it's vacant except if you pass by there are lots of vans.
Yes.
And lots of cars. Because the same owner owns across the street and and there isn't any more, I mean, he's got cars parked on the sidewalk. actually, I drove by there on the weekend, he's got 2 Jeeps parked in the sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Every time I go by there is a little park, there's kids running around, it's a big intersection, everything that was stated. And it's recently purchased, so it's not like there was something there. Right, it's a repair shop, right, gas station repair shop.
There's no gas station
Was,
yeah, but it makes me wonder if, for example, there was an old gas station at the nursery site that they had to clean up
Yes,
before they
on the
built.
corner wall.
Is that the case here? Has anybody,
Oh, he'll have to do something there.
done
I don't know.
environmental cleanup? Has anybody?
Well, there is definitely, they have to
That's
deal
not
with the
doing
culvert, there's a culvert that needs to be repaired underneath, so there definitely needs to.
There used to be
But
gas
you
pumps.
mean
There used to
brown
be gas,
fields.
yeah, there used to be gas pumps in front of that.
yeah, but she's right, why aren't they required to do, brownfielding there, it wasn't, it had fluids and oils and stuff.
I don't.
In order to put a resident.
Wait, I mean, I think that we'll have to look at that.
This is a, works, you're not the person though, right, you're the neighbor.
I'm the neighbor, I understand. I just want to make a 2-second comment if you don't have go on.
Sorry?
You're
okay with that?
As far as the gas station, it was mitigated a couple of years back.
Oh.
So that, the problem's clear.
Can you just introduce yourself?
But as far as
And you have to
the,
introduce yourself.
oh, okay. Dennis Santucci, 173 Croton Avenue, then Cortland. As far as the applicant, he hasn't been upfront with the whole, which his board or the other board. He's never shown a site plan that showed the existing conditions for the front of the building. The front of the building has 4 existing parking spaces. He's bringing the addition out to the front, which he's making his own hardship. And he's creating the hardship. You know, and I thought in lieu of parking, if you eliminate parking spaces, you're not supposed to get that. So, you know, that's one. And the other thing, that the planning board did not do a recommendation. I also thought in lieu of parking, the planning board is supposed to give a recommendation to move forward with the project.
Yes,
I really hope
you're
you guys-
probably right, but they have chosen not to.
Right, I get it, but I hope you guys decide to deny the project as it sits. He could make a building that's same footprint as there and be fine, but he's chosen to come out to the front, well, and the whole thing, eliminating parking spaces. And as far as the town, nothing to do with this comment, but the town board maybe should really look at that property to purchase it from the owner. It's very sensitive. You have the water course that runs under it. You have this parking problem. You could use it for in lieu of parking spaces for the village and do a little park in the area. Make a bus, a structure for the bus, for the crossing guard, the whole thing. It would be very beneficial, I think, in the, you know, years to come, to own that piece of property.
Okay,
Thank you so much for letting me talk.
yeah, that's fine.
Correct me if I'm
Thank you.
wrong. But in the 5 conditions, one of them states about it being self-created, correct? When they go through the 5
Well,
conditions,
that's for use variance.
for use variance,
That's for use variance would be self-created condition.
I don't believe payment in lieu has been made.
Condition.
no, I'm talking about him self-creating the problem by changing the footprint of the building. Cause I agree with Mrs. Santucci. They can park in front of that building. There's parking there. Now he's pushing out, according to his drawings, he's pushing it out to meet this building, which now takes probably 3 to 4 feet out of there, which puts him into the sidewalk. So, in my opinion, it's being self-created. He's not trying to work with what he has. He's trying to change the footprint of the building, which he's entitled to, but he's not entitled to the pilot, in my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else?
But the rule, the way that I heard the law was that, the decision should be based on is the condition equal to or better from the proposed condition of the existing condition. And in my belief, that just given what's going on there, the proposed condition is not better by adding the need by having additional parking on street to that area. So for me, that's the rationale that I would use
For not moving
for
forward.
not providing.
Anybody here with comments?
Question on the payment in lieu of parking. My understanding was that, money that they pay would go toward parking related benefits, but it's in kind of that area. It couldn't be like in another part of the village. Is that correct?
Do you wanna talk?
It's generally towards parking, so it's not area specific.
But it could be like across town.
It could be, because it goes into a fund. And if not spent within 10 years, it goes back to the applicant.
Are you suggesting we might want to make it that way? That was your understanding that it?
No, that was
Okay,
just
you're getting
clarifying.
clarity.
Yeah, now I understand.
Okay,
If the board remembers, so we did have preliminary conversations about, the fact that if you can't create parking in the area, that's something we might want to revisit of the areas where we allow for parking. So,
I guess that's really where my concern comes from, because if we're talking about like trees, for example, you cut down a tree, you plant it somewhere else, like the net carbon dioxide, like it will balance out. But if you're creating a parking need and we're putting that money toward the aqueduct hub or an Arcadian somewhere or something, how is that helping Upper Britain? It's not. And so that to me is where
That was
was
the
being said,
intention.
that was the intention, but if that's not the way it's set up, then it.
Right, I think
It's what's the intention, but it is hard when you don't have as much village-owned property and we're certain, we're much more limited in what we can do on Croton Avenue.
yeah, but I think our intentions are for public record, even if it's not in a code. People can go to court and argue back and forth, but somebody can argue, there was discussion with the idea that you don't take one part of town and make it concrete in another part of town. I mean, this is actually the problem in development that we always see, like all of a sudden, one part of town starts being, what's a great word, ugly, like it just becomes concrete after concrete, and then another part of town somehow isn't. And that's just the equity in that structure, to me, is not something I would want to ever create. And I agree with everything that's being said, not to mention that frankly, some of the neighbors, whether it's the commercial neighbors, because really it's your commerce, I know you also are in Ossining and other places, but that there have been complaints that haven't really been remedied from a community point of view. So I'm not actually in favor of using the program. As Bob Fitchie had said, he is in a sense creating and not enhancing. So what's our next step here, people?
We'd have to have a resolution denying the application.
Okay. And I think we all understand there's application that the person can then take it to whatever next legal aspect they want to, that's on that.
Change its design.
And, or the person can change their design, so it's residence and office space and all of that. And then we have the other issue, which is all these vans and cars and that thing they're building. I'm assuming planning is, passing all the rules and making sure everything is copacetic. Okay, I think we're next on the.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, it's fine, thank you for coming in, it's,
Thank you, looking for purchasing that property.
Sir,
Great
as a
asset.
matter, just so you know, and I know you've been in this community for decades. This village has not fared well when it has bought or taken for free property. We're still sitting with a bank for 55 years now. That we were generously given when told how great it was to the board in those days, so we are not our thing.
Bench you have already, you can make a nice little park there. Little parking area. Use it for the
Listen,
program.
I'm sure that you've got a great idea.
Take care, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
School together.
next, again, continuing with the Squirt Valley portion of our is the T-zone moratorium proposed extension. And as you all know, we've been looking at, and Valerie's done a tremendous amount of work as a steward on looking at the conditional uses in our T-zone. And this is challenging and it's nuanced and it really does take a lot of time. So the any request for additional time for continued evaluation is because it's very important that we look at all of the potential conditional uses, looking through the lens of what the community wants to see, what is reflective of the comprehensive plan and its intent. And that we're getting those parameters right, because those really, that sets the guardrails so that the planning board is then able to approve or deny proposals for conditional uses based on what the community has recognized as wanting to see in Ossining. And we know from experience when those guardrails aren't sort of established in a way that is truly reflective of what we need to see, or what the community desires to see, that sometimes we end up in a position where projects are approved that don't necessarily fit the needs of the immediate neighborhood or the community as a whole, as again, reflective of input of the entirety, the majority of the community, what people want to see. So with that, I just want everybody to appreciate that this is probably one of the hardest parts about zoning, is really getting it right, because whatever we have now documented is now becomes the rules and regulations that the zoning board and the planning board need to follow. And after that, we want to change it, we have to come back to the board to do a rezoning. So it's an involved process, and I just want to commend the people working on it, who've done a good job, Maddie and Valerie and Stuart. But again, getting it right is important, and making sure we're looking at all the potential consequences of our decisions is really what's key here. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Valerie and Stuart.
The reason this is before you tonight is that the moratorium expires on July the 13th. You're now within the 2-month window where you can extend for 4 months. So you've done this before, you did it with the SPN. So the question is, do you wish to extend? If you do, it would have to be a local law, it would have to go to planning, then come back to you, and then it could be extended for 4 months, which would take it till November the 13th.
And I just want to explain a little bit. So we are going to come back with some revisions probably in June. But as we've been investigating this a little bit more, we've been looking at some of the conditional uses, especially you have, like, for example, with education and places of worship. The current code just have them all bucketed into like one big category. And as we've been looking at it a little bit more, we realized that this is an issue with all the different zoning districts, that we just have places of worship, right? And like one big category, or education is one big category, and there's very little regulations. And so what we are looking to do is come back with actual like regulations associated with some of these conditional uses, and potentially propose to turn them into, instead of conditional uses, special permit uses, so that there is specific regulations that you have to meet in order to be able to move forward. It will also allow for situations where the planning board has better guidance in terms of what its flexibility is to deal with like parking management plans or different loading or unloading zones and those types of things that are associated with different types of uses that right now you just don't have the regulations for in the zoning. And as you know, we've already had a couple of different, uses come before this board talking about a couple different properties, talking about maybe potentially putting some of those uses on site. This is why we're having this kind of conversation, because you do have some properties that are for sale and some properties that are, in other different zoning districts that are potentially going to have these types of uses coming forth. And right now, based on what we back in 2009, when these were adopted, things have changed since that period of time. And I'm almost positive that a lot of that language that was adopted in 2009 came from the 1990 zoning, right? So nothing has really been updated with these types of uses. So that's really why it's taken a little bit longer. It will be a workshop item where that will be primarily most of the workshop. We'll go through it, but that's really why we're asking for a little bit more.
How does this affect the Muslim Community Center?
So that's a really good question. So we're actually going to be creating, regulation, and some of the proposals that we're looking to do are, so for example, with places of worship, you have different categories. Right now, a place of worship should not be approved unless it's on 3-acre property. You clearly don't have places of worship you clearly have places of worship that are not on 3-acre properties, right? So those would be more of like what we call, there's a new a category called neighborhood places of worship versus community places of worship versus like what they call like residential places of worship. So there's different categories depending upon the size.
Be like Mary Knoll or something. Or...
Right, exactly. Community is more like a Mary Knoll type of situation. So so as we're looking at this, we're realizing what you have within your code does not really reflect what you have, again, happening on, within your community. And so creating some regulations and requirements that when you're dealing with like a neighborhood place of worship, how do you review that? What are the regulations that you're looking for in terms of parking and, like potentially buffers, screening, that type of thing versus something on like a 3-acre site.
But the thing is, all these changes will then be applied retroactively to a property that was purchased for particular use. Not knowing that this was going to happen. And it further delays their ability to work on the property, right?
I think it's important, though, this is really important. In everything, buyer beware. Had the applicant come to, the village and talk about this use, there were a few different issues with that. One, regardless of the moratorium, that building had been vacant for more than a year, which means it was a pre-existing non-conforming, or in this case, it was a conditional use. It still would have had to go through site plan approval. Without going through site plan approval, and without the planning board understanding what they want to do, where they're going to park, having them do that right can cause, and I'm not talking about that specifically, but for any project can cause numerous project problems. So, one of the concerns that was raised by some of the people in the community is we have no problem with the use. They just don't have anywhere to park, and we're already jam-packed with parking. So we're looking at this through that lens to set up criteria where we don't want to prohibit uses that are helpful, like whether it's religious organizations, community groups, whatever it is, those are beneficial to the community. However, regardless of the moratorium, they'd be in the same position that they are now. The only difference is now it's prolonging perhaps the ability to move further, but more likely under the existing rules, they would have been denied anyway. So I understand that it's challenging for them, but when you buy a property for a specific use and you haven't checked the zoning regulations for that use, you take a risk that, on the other hand, we're looking at this through the lens of how do we don't want to cause harm to people who are trying to do their things in the community. Right now, our current zoning doesn't accommodate what they want to do. It doesn't. So, while it could make them take things longer, it may prove advantageous to them longer term. And also, very importantly, advantageous in the community because the project won't go forward with a parking plan that's not conducive to that area.
And I would say it also will give them more predictability when they start working with a design professional. They'll know exactly what it is that the planning board is expecting to see, as opposed to now, where, as Valerie described, it's sort of, reinventing the wheel every time you have one of these uses, because the code is not really helpful in telling the planning board exactly what this board and the community for the comp plan really wants to see. So it's taking a little bit longer now, but once they're ready to hit the ground, they will have that predictability and be able to move much faster on the back end, I believe.
And I think the other thing, that's not specific, there are many properties that are not developed right now, that people bought with the anticipation of developing and they didn't develop, and now the zone is changing. And we have tried our best through ways to engage those people. So right now, to the degree that we know of those people, they've been invited to come to public hearings or workshops or events you know, the type of event, the community engagement event we had a couple weeks ago. Realistically, I'm not sure we can do much more than that. But this is a risk that you take when you buy property to develop, or particularly for commercial use, rental housing, those types of things. Zoning is subject to change, and by not doing that, and I think too, like, because we know that a lot of our zoning, particularly on conditional uses, things like this, is old. Like, we haven't looked at the zoning, we didn't do a rezoning when we did the comprehensive plan, we intentionally said we will subsequently work on the zoning, and it is a long-term process, particularly when the zoning hasn't been updated in many, many, many years. And what worked even 10 or 20 years ago is not necessarily what the community, and when I say the community, I'm talking about, we live in a very diverse community with a wide range of needs, with a tremendous amount of pre-existing non-conforming uses on almost every street. Trying to put this all together in a way that maintains people's quality of life going forward is just no easy feat.
It sounds like you need more time because there's a lot of detail, and board members should really read the material and really go through what's being asked as well. The education, sort of this big macro understanding, houses of worship. I remember like somebody telling me, you know, we have lots of like churches, like 20-something churches. The truth is, the way churches were used 30 years ago is not actually the way they're predominantly being used now. Many of them are empty. Many of them had 500 family members, they now have 50. Many of them, and we've gone to meetings, village manager and I actually went to meetings where there's churches sitting there going, we want to use it for other things, but they're not really using it for the way they used to. A lot of them have become event spaces, a lot of them are being, not a lot, some are being rented out for money to profit organization and nonprofit organization. So this loosey-goosey thing, in some ways is flexibility. In other ways, it's also, you know, what's a community center versus a religious institution versus a school. Because in a school where you have a bunch of 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, you need bathrooms of a certain size. A church that's small and just is open like Sundays and a few other days doesn't need a bunch of little bathrooms for, you know, 300 kids. I mean, the uses actually make a difference in what you're supposed to do in these. And then there's the parking, the drop-offs. So some churches have schools and have had, but one of the things we heard, you know, is people sit there and go, parking, right? Because when you have a lot of little kids, you need a lot of drop-off and parking consideration. It's changed over the years. You know, of course, well, I think many religions, I don't think it's specific to any one. So I think we have a lot of vacuums is what I'm hearing. It's not that we have bad, old, it's like there's a lot of vacuum to sort of explain so that planning can sit there and go, this is what you need. Because if you're gonna build X, you need Y. And you need more time with that because that's a lot of details that you're sifting through. In plain English, you need more time because of all the other projects you're also working on.
Yes.
And it will affect, like, I'm sure properties that will, all of a sudden somebody will show up and say, but I bought this in 1978 and it should, you know, it was this and it should continue to be that. Yeah, well, there's been something empty. So, I mean, I'm okay if we're within that 2 month to personally for my one vote, because it has to get done. And this is part of a much larger project. I feel like, I can't believe we're getting to this finally. And it just seems like there's a lot of loosiness to all of this that people need to have parameters. Otherwise, people are buying property in good faith and then sitting there saying, doesn't say I can't do that. Like, it doesn't say I'm not allowed to do this. It doesn't say I need that. It doesn't say the realtor didn't tell me. Nobody told me, you know. Okay, well, so I think we're at that point. I mean, I'm in favor of it, but you know, I don't know What's the requirement here tonight? What are we being asked to do?
If the board is in agreement, I can have a resolution next week to refer an extension of the moratorium to the planning board. And then it would be a local law that you would have to adopt.
So do you need, I'm looking at you, Valerie, but I should be looking at Stuart too. Is it the full, what is it, a 4-month extension?
It
Is it
would be
a
a
3
4
month?
month, it's whatever you wish. You can
I
do it wherever you
understand. So
want
what do you
to.
guys think you need? Because you're working on many,
I
many
would,
things.
I would actually go for 4 months, put it out so you, because
can always
once
end it
you
sooner.
adopt the change. the
Oh, you could go
moratorium
shorter if you finish sooner.
Yeah,
That's an law.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So better to go long and then cut it short if you finish. You can't go the other way, is what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, anyway, should we start with Bob again? Where are you on this? Just so we can go.
I'm in favor of extension.
Yes.
Or, yes on you, Dana? Yes on you. Okay, so 5 yeses on that. Thank you. This is big.
it is,
I mean,
and
This
that's.
is big. We've talked about this for a number of years of like bringing this all in and. yeah,
Right, and
so thank you.
originally, like I said, we originally thought it was focused on like the T districts, but as we started looking, we're like, whoa, with these, you know, in the village center. It's like, well, there already are these uses and now they need 3 acres, that's not gonna
And I
happen.
think there's actually more churches than we
Right,
realize. 'cause
right,
I think we go a block where
so,
there's no
you
church
know,
in
and
Austin.
just-
Actually, when we moved here, the realtor took us around, said it's a lovely community, there are, she told us, there are 22 houses of worship.
At least.
And some of them like are really historic and beautiful, it was actually like something she talked about, so I've always thought there were a lot, I mean, it's not a big area. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you, thank you, Valerie, I think that concludes your
The
performance.
Stewart and Valerie show.
And, next up, we are, working with Father Walter, not only on 34th State Street and the Dodge Street, but it was the selected developer for the Main Street development, which is, all market rate, mixed use with ground floor retail, about 110 units, and we're getting ready to, we are going to have to start working with them on a pilot negotiation, as well as land use acquisition agreement, and sheet, and given our more recent experience working with pilots, and, you know, getting some counsel from the county IDA and Portchester IDA, we feel it greatly behooves the village to hire and retain a fiscal impact analysis firm to provide us with the information we need to fully evaluate any pilot that Walter would put forth, and to be able to negotiate that based on real data on cost to the school district, infrastructure cost, community, public safety costs, so that we really understand, and then also look at the economic development benefits of the development, you know, a range of different things, to make sure that the pilot is based on a fair exchange of benefits. And that the taxpayer is not burdened by a pilot that's be underestimated. So to that end, you know, after educating ourselves, Maddie and I spent some time last year, or 2 years ago doing this, and more recently meeting with Frank Farrar at the Portchester IDA. We interviewed 3 different agencies. We had worked very successfully with Mike Rella in Des Moines from who worked specifically for the county. Mike Rella is a economic development specialist. He's their advisor, and Des Moines is the agency that produces the fiscal analysis study. We talked to him. We talked to Victoria Stores at Stores Associates, and we talked to Kevin Grench at Grow America. All 3 agencies provide basically variations of the same service. We can't go wrong. But we did really work on trying to figure out, how do we work with somebody that not only can do the work, but also do the work in a way that really brings the community in, like you know, like maybe with that special touch that sometimes Ossining needs, or a smaller village as opposed to one of the bigger, you know, the bigger cities, things, a lot of these agencies, all of them work on very big projects as well as smaller projects. So, again, they're all very, very good agencies. For this particular project, at this point in Ossining, we really felt that Stores Associates provided the most thorough and detailed presentation specific to Ossining. And Maddie and I also, when we met with her, had the same feeling. So again, all agencies we've looked at were great. But for this particular project, we'd like to recommend Stores Associates to go forward. The agreement would be between the village and Stores Associates. We would pay, this would be reimbursable through, the developer would reimburse us.
We would escrow it up.
We would do an upfront escrow so that that money's committed by the developer. There wouldn't be any change in their mind if they didn't like our report. That was one thing that Victoria stressed that we thought was very helpful. So, that is our recommendation, and we need to, have a resolution on next week to allow us to go to contract with, Stores Associates.
Any questions or comments? Let's
No, but-
thumbs up.
The only questions I had was I was thinking through it were, has Stores and Associates done a similar analysis on previous projects by the same developer?
Same developer, I'm not sure.
I don't know that
Similar, yes. Yeah,
Similar,
Similar,
absolutely,
yeah,
but
that third
not with this particular developer.
Okay,
I do not believe so, but she did just recently, this evening, and I had to print it out.
then while you're looking that up, my other two questions would be, she's got no working relationship with the developer, right? At all, this is like 100%.
No, she was very clear on, so she's actually working, most recently, with the City of Mount Vernon IDA, City of Yonkers IDA, on various projects, Portchester IDA, and then Village of Briarcliff, so I'll check with our folks there, so.
I think the question is whether.
But more of a conflict of interest.
There's much
Yeah.
more interest related, so that's kind of, that's.
Well, it could be a plus, it could be a minus. It's for us to sort of think through, but actually, I was. About the clients are.
Yeah, and then the other question would be just that, let's, we both did in the process, that when we're going through it, it sounded like they would provide like a spreadsheet to the developer, and the developer would put it out, and hopefully there's some like sanity check or validation of the numbers that are coming back, as opposed to just purely doing that, right? So I want to make sure that like there's a sanity check of
I think
that piece,
I
right?
think yes, but I think also the thing in particular, if you don't mind, that everything that Karen said is exactly how I felt, upon meeting her and then also reviewing the proposal. But to sort of add to what you're asking, I think her proposal was the one that offered the village the most opportunity to play with different scenarios, to say like, okay, here's the spreadsheet that's filled out, but what if? So giving us, I think, 3 bites at the apple to sort of say, okay, but if this won't work, let's try this, let's run the numbers in 3 different contexts.
And all of them, in fairness, have the ability to, if we want to increase the scope of work, it's not gonna be an issue.
Yes, okay.
Look, it's weird, right? Because you think they're the client because they're paying, they're not the client, we're the client, it's an escrow account. They have to pay, we're the client. So I know it seems always, I know you do, but I think also people always get confused by that, so.
Well,
I mean, the public, no.
Victoria Source specifically said that she will not even take a phone call from the developer. Like, she will only speak to the developer, like the client, like we are the client, that's.
Yeah, and I see this as good to the people we used last time, for the first time, based on the staff's recommendation, because we didn't used to use a third party to do this analysis. We not only learned a lot, Bob, you remember this, we didn't just learn a lot, it was a financial benefit to the taxpayers. But it's no reflection on the past person, cause he's in the mix, it's
Very
just
good
we,
too.
we will, he's good, I mean, we'll just now have two experts as we do a lot of the stuff, so I think that's a
And there
positive.
may
So,
be, other things that we'll be working, you know, we might want to
Their
remind
mindset.
on in the future. But again, you know, it's been a good education for us, for the staff, but, also I think this ensures that we are very confident as we move forward with a pilot on this particular project, that that pilot really is in the best interest of the entire community, the taxing entities, school district, and it is definitely the way to go, so.
anybody have an issue, or is everybody a thumbs up? Thumbs up?
Yep.
Thumbs up, you're okay, we're moving.
All right, well, we had a lot on the agenda, but, we went through pretty quickly.
That's because none of us want to read all this stuff on this paper.
So all have already read.
Have already read. Yes. Already. read.
That's me, that's good, we.
No, actually, we got a big warning, I think everybody did actually look at stuff, thank you, everybody. I actually want to do exec session based on something, just, with the board, so can we call it exec session? So we're done, correct?
And
That's
we are
right.
done.
Okay, so if we could do a motion for exec session.
Second.
Okay, favor, yay. People, 9:11. Lots on the agenda, thank you to everyone who did all this amount of work and. So we go ahead to Wednesday. Good.